of her recently deceased husband. It's understood that Mrs. McGraw, who returned to the island on Monday after receiving news of her husband's death, had fallen out with the husband's family. The details of that dispute are wild. Cover story this afternoon, what we woke up to this morning. The police are yet to establish a motive for the murder of 3 women and a man in Top Crawl District, Riversdale, St. Catherine, on Tuesday morning. The Major Investigations Division is leading the probe into the incident, which has a quiet community reeling this afternoon.
The gunmen struck about 2:15 a.m. The deceased are 45-year-old businesswoman Carrie Ann Higgins McGraw, her mother Dorothy Higgins, the family's housekeeper Diane Johnson, and her boyfriend, whom the police have identified only as Kevin. The 4 were shot at close range.
Sources are telling our news center that the killing of the 4 is related to a dispute involving Mrs. McGraw and the family of her recently deceased husband. It's understood that Mrs. McGraw, who returned to the island on Monday after receiving news of her husband's death, had fallen out with the husband's family. The details of that dispute are wild, and we'll not repeat them here.
But we did put those matters to the head of the police's Corporate Communications Unit, CCU, Senior Superintendent Stephanie Lindsay.
There is no clear indication as to what motivated this attack just yet. They are picking up bits and pieces of information from whoever they can talk to and from what our intelligence community is telling us. But still, we don't know, so they are following some lines of inquiries and looking at everything that they are getting now to see if we can be closer to what led to this attack and then who are the persons responsible.
SSP Lindsay says the police are doing a background on the deceased.
They're actually now looking at the profile of the individuals. Based on what we have gathered, they lived in the community. They're living in a community. They said they're described as a very private community that, not much interaction with many persons. So a lot of persons just know that they live here and they operate here. There's a farm on the property as well. So that's about what people would share about this family.
That's SSP Stephanie Lindsay. She's the head of the JCF's CCU. Our news team was able to speak with a man, Marvin Brown, who says he's a cousin of Mrs. McGraw.
I can't ball. If my ball, I eat that for me. I can't ball. Right now, I don't know what I mean, you didn't know. I do that myself. Can't ball. The news, about 2:30. I'm going to be honest with you. I full up every tool from Glengarve. Come up here. For sure. I phone them up. How me believe me call her phone and her big son answer. Sean answer to me. No, me dead. I couldn't do nothing more. I tell you some full up every patrol to reach up here.
Marvin Brown. He's a cousin of the deceased, Carrie Ann Higgins McGraw. Well, joining us to discuss further, we have with us Commander Area 5 Police, Assistant Commissioner Gary Griffiths, and the Member of Parliament for North East St. Catherine, Carencio Morrison. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Clifton. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Let me begin with you, ACP Griffiths. When we spoke earlier today with SSP Lindsay, the police had not yet established a motive. Have you done so since?
No, we have not established a clear motive, but we're looking at least 2 lines of inquiry, 2 theories that could have led to the death of this family. And I must express sincere condolences to the family of the deceased. And there's something I have to say, Cliff, and I think I need to say this. Sometimes you say things and get flocking, but I need to say this. When you're in a combustible environment, all you have to do is to lit a match. And part of one of the theory we're getting is that the common law husband of Mrs. McGrath, he died over the weekend on Friday. having been ailing for a few days. Now, this deceased is probably a second generation, what we'll call persons who find themselves in conflict with the law. One of his brothers was previously killed by gunmen who learned, and parents before were said to be involved in criminality. So that is something I want to put on the field from earlier.
Is one of your two theories related to an accusation that the man who died last Friday was poisoned?
That is one thing out there, and of course we're looking into that. The postmortem has not yet been done with. That is one direction we're looking.
Anything to suggest, ACP, that Mrs. McGrath, well, we reported based on what we picked up, we dispatched a reporter there, he was there from early, and he picked up on the ground that Mrs. McGrath may have had a very, very bad feud with her husband's side of the family. Is that what your investigators are picking up early in the piece?
I'm not aware of that, but just to say that our intelligence community is getting that there was some concern that Blake, that's the common husband, could have been poisoned. So, of course, we're looking at that. I don't know if there was a feud, but I know she has made, she has spoken to the Riversdale police, and as a matter of fact, prior to her being killed, shortly after she came back from overseas, I learned that she had discussion with the police at the station. I know that there were some issues.
Was it as phone? Did she make a report about anything to the police?
Not that we're aware of. You know, I don't know if if her discussion was relative to her deceased common law husband, or if it was relative to what you're saying about the feud. I don't know. I'm yet to ascertain that.
Yeah. MP, good afternoon again. The community itself, people outside of that neck of the woods would be wanting to know what kind of community is Top Crawl. How do you get there from any of the main points in Northeast St. Catherine?
Well, Top Crawl is a community that is in Riversdale. And if you're coming via Dog Walk, you'd find Top Crawl approximately 15 to 20 minutes outside of the Dog Walk community, heading north, heading more towards. And the space is northeastern St. Catherine. And very easy to find. It's one of the closest points. Riversdale, you pass through communities such as Nollis to get there. Mm-hmm. Yes.
ACP Griffiths, in terms of the progress you're making, how would you characterize this at this hour, given the fact that it happened only this morning after 2?
Well, it's early hours, and I think our detectives are working overtime to see what they can pick up. Our investigation has looked at a number of persons that we could speak with, and we have so far interviewed at least 2 persons, and we're continuing. We're hoping to get somewhere with this. I think based on what we're picking up, I think we can reach somewhere with this investigation.
Are you clear as to how many gunmen were involved?
Well, we're told 3 masked men.
All wearing masks. And in terms of the cooperation from the community, how is that going?
Well, it's a very homogeneous community, notwithstanding on the ground we're hearing that persons might not have enjoyed the best relationships with the family there. Some reasons were attributed to this relationship. So we would not say, but although it's a homogeneous community, I don't think the relationship between people in the community was at its best
And
with
could you-
that particular family.
Could you explain what do you mean by an homogeneous community?
And people know people and people will talk to people.
Uh-huh. But it was not a popular family. They had issues with
Yes,
members of the community.
We're getting that.
Yes. Ah, dear.
MP, these people, the deceased rather, and I have to be respectful to the deceased. Were they known to you? Did you know them on first name terms?
And I'm thanking you for asking me that question. I was a bit worried that what I'll be asked is where we can find Top Call or Riversdale. Well, from what we know, the family, very private, didn't interact much with the community, and the community saw the family as being reserved. So most of us, we did not know them on a personal basis. We know that they did farming there, and even most of those who were employed to work on the farm, they were not from Northeastern St. Catherine. It's a private community called hardworking people, as I mentioned before. Farming community, many of them shopkeeping, work hard, send their children to school. It's a typical rural community, peaceful. We have uneventful days as people quietly pursue, their course of life.
Mm-hmm. Hold it right there for us, ACP. Hold it.
I gather ACP has to leave us.
Okay.
Thank you very much, ACP Griffiths.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
You're welcome. Good. Stay with us, MP Morrison. And after the break, we'll be 12 minutes going up to 6 o'clock. We're trying to get more as to what unfolded in Top Crawl in Riversdale, St. Catherine after 2 this morning. We heard from the head of the Area 5 Police, Assistant Commissioner Griffiths. He said something, George, which is really sticking with me. When we probe him as to the motive, he said, when you have a combustible situation, all it requires is someone to light a match.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
And they drew a line of people in the family being involved in conflicts.
Including conflicts with the law.
With the police and with people of ill intent, yeah.
And the members of the family who have been killed.
Members of the family who have been killed. And a family that the community really has at arm's length.
Yes.
Based on what he said, the interaction between them and the others in the community.
We're being joined by the opposition spokesman on security, Senator Peter Bunting. Welcome to the discussion, sir.
Thank you. Good evening and good evening to your listeners.
Good. My other guest is the MP for North East and Catherine, Terencia Morrison. MP Morrison, that meant by ACP Griffiths. A combustible situation? Is that surprising to you? Were you aware of this?
No.
No.
Not at all. And it's very interesting, right, that the ACP is making that comment. So he is picking up things that maybe the citizens of that space are not even aware of, because the citizens represent the family to be very private, and that they did not interact much with the community.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I am going by what the citizens have said to me about who they are, who they were, how they lived, etc. So you wouldn't find them out at the front getting involved or so on. So they don't have a very close relationship, with the community. So maybe it's the investigation that is uncovering a little bit more about the family that, maybe the constituents found to be mysterious.
Is Top Crawl somewhere, MP, where outsiders are frequent and the outsiders are taken in? I ask that question because I know that in some communities, people are so suspicious of outsiders to the extent that they don't harbor them, they don't come there. What would you say is the situation where Top Crawl is concerned?
And not only Top Crawl, I would say Northeastern St. Catherine, unlike many rural constituencies, people will move in and out, and that is, I suspect, one of the challenges that the police may have, that movement, and where we don't find constituents who are citizens who are on the alert, citizens who question things, citizens who report to the police that we have seen this young man in our constituency or in our community for 2 weeks or more. We don't know where he's from. We don't know who he's related to, but we see him hanging around. It's unfortunate that we don't have that culture. So we will see strange faces from time to time, and many persons are afraid to even say anything, to report what they know, because they don't want reprisal. And there's a part of us that can understand why. But unfortunately, that's one of the things that we are faced with as a country in many of our rural communities, that strange people can just move there. Nobody questions anything. No one even says to the police, we have noticed that 5 men have moved into this area. Officer, can you check this out?
Senator Bunting, your reaction to the murders?
Unfortunately, I didn't hear the earlier part of your program when the GSF representatives were there, but from what I'm hearing yourself and George saying, I'd be very wary and cautious of what I'm noticing, a sort of a trend to almost blame victims. That, them come from a mix-up family or something like that. I really think that is not the approach that the JSF would take to, especially in a situation where 3 women were victims. I am really cautious to go down that road. Just last week, I heard DCP Fitzbailey commenting on the unfortunate shooting related to the Integrity Commission, that, the victim was carrying a huge sum of money. Why was that necessary? You're making the people victims twice over. I really would caution the GSF to be very careful in how they speak about these incidents, because it's almost as if they're trying to wash their hands of responsibility and said, the victims did something that brought this upon themselves. And I really don't like that trend at all.
But what if their investigations lead them in that direction? In the case of Mr. Evans, robbery as a motive, as in the case of what happened this morning, a domestic dispute. We know we have a serious problem with domestic disputes. Just a moment. We know we have problems with domestic disputes in the country. We're terrible at resolving personal conflicts peacefully. And we know in resolving those, we resort to violence. That's a reality.
And no one is denying that these are possibilities. But all I'm saying is we have to be careful about not re-victimizing the victims. You can say we suspect robbery is a motive without saying that someone was carrying a huge sum of cash. That is my point.
Yeah, but Senator, in the case of ACP Griffiths, and it's unfortunate you didn't hear him, he said that there were a few lines of inquiry, and
two lines of inquiry.
Yeah, that was one of them, and he didn't make that one seem like it took primacy over the other. So, and as Cliff was saying, well, if the investigation early doors is leading them in that direction, and we ask the question, he's duty bound to tell us what the investigators are picking up early, even though I take the point that you're making. But just to be clear, that ACP Griffiths wasn't, saying that is likely to have been the motive behind this morning's incident.
Mr. Bunting, did you hear that?
No, I heard that. I mean, I'm not sure that I think we need to have another round of response.
Okay.
I think I've made a point.
But in terms of your word this afternoon, yes, so here we are at a place again, quadruple murder, yes, 3 women, 1 man. And then the other thing, Senator Bunting, that we have been reporting since morning, whoever perpetrated the act did not intend to hurt the children. 5 children were somehow ushered out of the house, put in safe distance away, the youngest being 6 months old, the oldest about 14. They didn't intend to hurt the children at all. Which, go ahead.
Well, fortunately, we have not generally descended to that level yet. Even the most callous gunmen, in most cases, you will find don't deliberately target children. So that, we've seen in other, I recall in Clarendon last year, year before, there was a similar incident where the children were put outside and not in the home when the murders took place. Fortunately, I suppose that there's some level that these gunmen haven't descended to. But I really think that, to me, it seems this goes beyond a domestic dispute. Even if a domestic dispute is what triggered it, but the perpetrators are obviously hardened criminals. The man and woman thing don't result in a quadruple murder. Just so.
Yeah.
So I really think the police need to do a really thorough workup of this crime, and we encourage all citizens to give any information that will assist in bringing the perpetrators to justice.
MP Morrison, in these situations, people in the community say, well, we've never seen anything like this in the time that we've lived here. You have a job on your hands as the representative to help people.